Ladies and gentlemen, this book is not about blaming the world, and it is not about waiting for change to arrive from outside. It is about choosing to force yourself to grow, even when comfort tries to hold you back. Rarely comes gently. It comes when you confront your excuses, push through resistance, and take full responsibility for your own journey. It's always someone else's fault you're not growing. This truth may sound uncomfortable, even offensive, but it is the very foundation of personal transformation. As long as you hold the belief that your struggles, failures, stagnation are caused entirely by other people or circumstances, you hand away the power to change your life. Think of it this way: if the problem is always outside of you, then the solution must also be outside of you, and that leaves you powerless. But the moment you decide to own your part, even if it is only one small piece, you take back control. Growth is impossible without responsibility. Responsibility is the engine of change. When you say, "It's their fault," you silence your ability to ask the hard but necessary question: what can I do differently? This doesn't mean that life is always fair, or that people never wrong you, or that you alone are responsible for every hardship. It means that improvement only begins when you stop waiting for others to fix what is broken and instead take ownership of your reactions, your habits, your decisions, and your future. Too many people spend years stuck in a loop of blame. They blame their parents for not raising them better. They blame their boss for not recognizing their worth. They blame the economy for keeping them poor. They blame society for holding them back. While some of those complaints may have truth in them, the truth is useless if it only leads to excuses. Blame never builds. Blame never creates. Blame never changes. Blame simply repeats the same story until you believe it so deeply that you stop looking for another ending. Responsibility, on the other hand, rewrites the story. When you tell yourself, "I cannot control everything, I can control myself," you unlock the possibility of growth. Consider this: the strongest, most resilient people in history are not the ones who had the easiest circumstances. They are the ones who chose ownership despite difficulty, the ones who faced injustice, loss, failure, or pain, and still said, "I will not let this define me. I will define myself." Growth is not about finding perfect conditions, it is about building strength regardless of conditions. The way you talk to yourself determines whether you stay trapped in blame or move forward in growth. If your inner voice constantly says, "This is unfair, it's not my fault, someone else is to blame," you will sink deeper into resentment. But if your inner voice says, "This may not be fair, but I will rise above it. I will not wait for permission to grow," then you step into empowerment. Positive self-talk is not about ignoring reality. It is about choosing the perspective that gives you power. Imagine two people who lose their jobs on the same day. The first one says, "This company ruined my life, I'll never succeed, is against me." The second one says, "This hurts, but it's my chance to learn, to adapt, to find a new path." The same event, two mindsets. One trapped in blame, the other moving toward growth. Which person will rebuild their life faster? Person will discover new opportunities? Which person will become stronger? The answer is obvious. When you take ownership, you activate growth. But when you cling to blame, you guarantee stagnation. And here's the uncomfortable truth: human beings are wired to protect themselves with blame. It feels easier to point the finger than to look in the mirror. Blame soothes the ego, because it tells you that you are never the problem. Ego that feels safe today is the same ego that keeps you weak tomorrow. growth is born in humility, in the willingness to admit that you are not perfect, that you make mistakes, that you have blind spots, that you can do better, is not weakness, it is strength. It takes far more courage to say, "I was wrong," than it does to say, "It's not my fault." But every time you choose courage over ego, you grow. Think about your own life. How many times have you blamed someone else and stopped there, your full attention? How many times have you told yourself that the reason you're not improving is because someone else didn't give you what you needed? How would your life look different if, in those moments, you had asked instead, "What can I do now to take back control?" That is the power of ownership. It shifts the focus from what you cannot control to what you can. That shift is where growth lives. If you want to force yourself to improve, you must develop the discipline of catching yourself in the act of blame and redirecting your focus toward responsibility. The next time you hear yourself say, "It's their fault," immediately follow it with the question, "But what can I do differently?" Train your mind to stop wasting energy on what you cannot change, and instead pour that energy into what you can. This will not happen overnight, because blame is a habit, and like all habits, it takes time to replace. Every time you choose responsibility over excuses, you strengthen the muscle of growth. Over weeks, months, and years, that muscle becomes unbreakable. Begin to see yourself not as a victim of life, but as the creator of your life. And that change in identity is the ultimate form of growth. To be clear, taking ownership does not mean blaming yourself for everything. It does not mean ignoring injustice, or pretending that people never hurt you, pretending that luck and privilege do not exist. It means refusing to give those things the final say over your future. It means saying, "This may not be my fault, but it is still my responsibility to rise." That shift is the difference between staying stuck and breaking free. The world is full of people who never improve because they are waiting for others to change first. They wait for their family to support them, for their boss to appreciate them, for their friends to encourage them, for the system to become fair. And while they wait, their lives pass by. Not join them. Do not waste your years waiting for fairness. Choose growth, choose ownership, choose to take responsibility for your part, however small. That is where freedom lies. Every time you take ownership, you send a message to yourself, "I am capable of change." Every time you repeat that message, you reinforce a mindset of strength. Eventually, that mindset becomes your default. You stop looking for someone to blame, and you start looking for solutions. You stop waiting for change, and you start creating change, and that is when true growth begins. So remember, if it's always someone else's fault, you're not growing. But the moment you claim responsibility, in the smallest way, you begin the journey of becoming stronger, wiser, and unstoppable. Growth does not come in comfort, and improvement does not live where everything feels easy. If you want to force yourself to improve, you must train yourself to face discomfort with courage instead of running from it. Because every step forward requires you to push against resistance, and resistance is always uncomfortable. Think about your own life for a moment. Every meaningful achievement you have ever had, whether it was learning a skill, building a relationship, improving your health, or overcoming a challenge, came through moments when you were stretched beyond what was comfortable. Comfort is pleasant. Comfort is tempting, but comfort is also a trap. It whispers to you that everything is fine when deep down you know that growth is being delayed. Comfort asks you to stay the same, Growth demands that you change, and change always feels awkward, difficult, or even painful. When you avoid discomfort, you are really avoiding growth. When you avoid growth, you are silently agreeing to stay stuck. This is why discomfort is not your enemy. It is your teacher, it is your training ground. It is the fire that forges strength. Imagine an athlete in training. The muscle only grows when it is torn slightly and rebuilt stronger. That tearing process is uncomfortable. Imagine a student learning something new. Confusion and frustration are natural at first, but they are signs that the brain is working to expand. Imagine someone facing rejection or failure. The sting hurts, but it creates resilience and sharpens determination if they refuse to quit. In every example, discomfort is not a sign to stop. It is proof that progress is happening. The problem is that most people have trained themselves to run at the first sign of difficulty. The moment it gets hard, they say, maybe this isn't for me, maybe I'm not ready, maybe I'll try later. But that is the exact moment where growth begins, and if you quit there, you deny yourself the transformation waiting on the other side. You must reprogram your mind to interpret discomfort as progress instead of danger. This is where positive self-talk becomes critical, because the words you use in those moments decide whether you push forward or give up. When you feel resistance, your inner voice might say, "This is too much, I can't handle it, I need to stop." That kind of talk kills improvement before it even starts. But if you train yourself to say, "This feels hard because I am growing. This is uncomfortable because I am stretching beyond what I used to be. This pain is proof that I am moving forward," then discomfort becomes fuel instead of fear. The difference is not the situation itself. The difference is the story you tell yourself about the situation. Growth is nothing more than a collection of uncomfortable steps taken consistently until the uncomfortable becomes normal. Think about the first time you tried anything challenging, the first time you ran a mile, the first time you spoke in public, the first time you tried to start a new habit. At first, everything felt unnatural. Your body resisted, your mind resisted, but with repetition, the discomfort faded. What once felt impossible became routine. This is the secret to improvement. Today's discomfort is tomorrow's confidence. Refuse discomfort, you refuse confidence, but if you embrace discomfort, you build unshakable strength. Now here is the key. Discomfort will not chase you, you must chase it. You must deliberately step into situations that stretch you, because the natural pull of life will always drag you back toward comfort. If you want to force yourself to improve, you must make discomfort a choice, not an accident. That means doing the thing you would rather avoid, saying yes to the opportunity you feel nervous about, practicing the skill that frustrates you, having the conversation that scares you, or taking the step that feels uncertain. Discomfort is the price of admission for growth, and you must be willing to pay it daily. But here is the good news: discomfort never lasts forever. It may feel unbearable in the moment, but it always passes, and what remains after it passes is strength. The more you step into discomfort, the more your tolerance grows, and what once felt impossible begins to feel normal. This creates a cycle of growth. You face discomfort, you survive it, you grow stronger, you gain confidence, and then you face bigger discomforts with courage. That is how people transform from ordinary to extraordinary, not by avoiding discomfort, but by learning to live inside it long enough for it to turn into growth. Self-talk is your greatest ally in this process. Discomfort often comes with doubt, and doubt can paralyze you if you do not control the conversation in your own head. In those moments, speak to yourself like a coach who refuses to let you quit. Tell yourself, one more step, one more try, one more push. Break discomfort into smaller pieces and remind yourself that you can always do just a little more. The human mind is powerful, but it is also easily convinced. If you tell yourself you cannot go on, your body will listen. But if you tell yourself you are stronger than you feel, your body will also listen. You must become the voice that drives you forward when discomfort tempts you to stop. And the more you practice this, natural it becomes, until discomfort no longer feels like a signal to quit, but a signal to grow. Remember, comfort is the enemy of progress. Discomfort is the birthplace of improvement. Every time you choose comfort, you choose stagnation, but every time you choose discomfort, you choose growth. If you want to force yourself to improve, stop waiting for the perfect moment, stop waiting to feel ready, stop waiting for life to get easier. Instead, train yourself to face the hard things now, with courage, with resilience, words of strength on your lips. The discomfort will not break you. It will build you. And the sooner you understand that, the faster you will grow. The next time you find yourself in a situation that feels difficult, painful, or uncomfortable, do not run. Instead, remind yourself, this is where growth lives. This is the fire that shapes me. This is the challenge that makes me stronger. And then step forward. Discomfort is not the end of the path. It is the beginning of the person you are meant to become. Improvement begins with self-awareness. Without it, no amount of effort or desire will lead to lasting change, because you cannot change what you refuse to see, and you cannot fix what you do not admit. Too many people drift through life blind to their own patterns, convinced that circumstances alone dictate their destiny. But the truth is that much of what holds us back comes from within, from the habits we repeat without thinking, the excuses we whisper to ourselves, and the lies we tell ourselves to feel safe. Self-awareness is not about judging yourself harshly, it is about observing yourself honestly, about shining a light on the parts of your behavior, your mindset, and your routines that are quietly shaping your future every single day. Most people avoid self-awareness because it feels uncomfortable to admit weakness or flaw, but avoiding it does not erase it. In fact, avoidance only deepens the patterns that keep you stuck. The key is to face yourself with courage and curiosity, to ask questions that cut through denial. What habits do I repeat that drain my energy? What thoughts do I entertain that weaken my spirit? What excuses do I make when I know I should act? The answers to these questions may sting, but they are the first steps to freedom, because awareness opens the door to change. Think of self-awareness like looking in a mirror. You cannot fix your hair, adjust your clothes, or clean your face unless you are willing to look. Ignoring the mirror does not make the flaws disappear. It only means you walk around blind to what everyone else can already see. The same is true of your character, your habits, and your mindset. Others may already see the patterns that you are blind to. Until you develop self-awareness, you will keep repeating them unconsciously. The power of self-awareness is that it gives you choice. Once you see a pattern, you can decide whether to continue it or replace it. But if you never see it, the pattern controls you without your permission. This is why people repeat the same mistakes in relationships, in finances, in health, or in career. They are living out unconscious patterns that they have never stopped to examine. Self-awareness is the interruption, the pause, the moment of clarity where you step outside of yourself and say, I see what I am doing, and I can choose differently. but this requires honesty, and honesty with yourself is one of the hardest disciplines in life. It is easy to point out flaws in others, easy to say, they are selfish, they are lazy, undisciplined. But it takes real strength to look inward and admit, I too can be selfish, I too avoid discipline, too make excuses. That level of honesty is rare, but it is the birthplace of growth. Once you begin to practice self-awareness, you realize that you are not powerless. You are simply responsible. You see that your life is the sum of your repeated choices, not just the result of what has been done to you. And this realization is not meant to burden you, it is meant to empower you, as if your life is shaped by your choices, then you can choose again, and you can choose better. Self-awareness also protects you from self-deception, which is one of the greatest enemies of growth. Without awareness, you trick yourself into believing you are working harder than you really are, that your effort is greater than it actually is, that your excuses are legitimate instead of lazy. Self-deception feels comforting, it quietly kills progress. With awareness, however, you begin to catch yourself in the act. You hear your own excuses as they come, and instead of believing them, you challenge them. You notice when you are procrastinating, when you are avoiding, when you are lying to yourself, and that awareness gives you the power to choose differently in real time. It is not about perfection. It is about progress, and progress always begins with seeing clearly. Positive self-talk is a critical part of this process. Awareness without compassion turns into self-loathing, and self-loathing destroys growth. If you notice your flaws and then attack yourself with negative talk, I'm stupid, I'm lazy, I'll never change, you create shame. Shame does not inspire change, it paralyzes it. Instead, you must learn to pair honesty with encouragement. I see that I procrastinate, but I am capable of discipline. I see that I make excuses, but I am strong enough to stop. I see that I avoid discomfort, but I can face it with courage. This is the balance of growth, honesty about where you are, combined with belief in where you can go. Self-awareness without self-belief leads to despair, but self-awareness with self-belief leads to transformation. To build self-awareness, practice paying attention to your thoughts, your emotions, and your behaviors without judgment. Notice the patterns, what triggers your excuses, what environments fuel your weakness, what people bring out your best, what times of day you feel strongest. Keep a journal, reflect daily, ask yourself questions, and listen to your own answers. Over time, you will begin to see connections that were invisible before, and those connections will reveal the roots of your struggles. Once you see the roots, you can pull them out instead of cutting the leaves. That is why some people fail to change. They address only the surface behaviors without understanding the deeper patterns. For example, someone may say, I need to stop wasting time on my phone. But until they realize that they use their phone to escape discomfort or avoid responsibility, keep repeating the behavior. Self-awareness digs beneath the surface and exposes the truth. And once the truth is visible, change becomes possible. The journey of self-awareness is never finished, because you are always growing, always evolving, and always facing new challenges. The more you practice it, the stronger it becomes, until awareness becomes a habit, a way of living, where you are constantly observing, learning, adjusting, and the reward is that you no longer live on autopilot, no longer trapped by unconscious habits. You live awake, alive, and intentional. You live as the author of your story instead of the prisoner of your patterns. So remember this. Growth begins the moment you decide to look honestly at yourself. It begins when you stop hiding from your flaws and start owning them, when you stop making excuses and start making changes, when you stop lying to yourself and start telling yourself the truth with compassion. You want to force yourself to improve. Cultivate the habit of self-awareness, because it is the foundation on which all other growth is built. Without it, you are blind, but with it, you can see, and when you can see, you can change. Improvement begins with self-awareness, and without it, no amount of effort or desire will lead to lasting change, because you cannot change what you refuse to see, and you cannot fix what you do not admit. Too many people drift through life blind to their own patterns, convinced that circumstances alone dictate their destiny. But the truth is that much of what holds us back comes from within, from the habits we repeat without thinking, the excuses we whisper to ourselves, lies we tell ourselves to feel safe. Self-awareness is not about judging yourself harshly. It is about observing yourself honestly, about shining a light on the parts of your behavior, your mindset, and your routines that are quietly shaping your future every single day. Most people avoid self-awareness because it feels uncomfortable to admit weakness or flaw, but avoiding it does not erase it. In fact, avoidance only deepens the patterns that keep you stuck. The key is to face yourself with courage and curiosity, to ask questions that cut through denial. What habits do I repeat that drain my energy? What thoughts do I entertain that weaken my spirit? What excuses do I make when I know I should act? The answers to these questions may sting, but they are the first steps to freedom, because awareness opens the door to change. Think of self-awareness like looking in a mirror. You cannot fix your hair, adjust your clothes, or clean your face unless you are willing to look. Ignoring the mirror does not make the flaws disappear. It only means you walk around blind to what everyone else can already see. The same is true of your character, your habits, and your mindset. Others may already see the patterns that you are blind to, but until you develop self-awareness, you will keep repeating them unconsciously. The power of self-awareness is that it gives you choice. Once you see a pattern, you can decide whether to continue it or replace it. But if you never see it, the pattern controls you without your permission. This is why people repeat the same mistakes in relationships, in finances, in health, or in career. They are living out unconscious patterns that they have never stopped to examine. Self-awareness is the interruption, the pause, the moment of clarity where you step outside of yourself and say, I see what I am doing, and I can choose differently. But this requires honesty, and honesty with yourself is one of the hardest disciplines in life. It is easy to point out flaws in others, easy to say, they are selfish, they are lazy, they are undisciplined, but it takes real strength to look inward and admit, I too can be selfish. I too avoid discipline, make excuses. That level of honesty is rare, but it is the birthplace of growth. Once you begin to practice self-awareness, realize that you are not powerless. You are simply responsible. You see that your life is the sum of your repeated choices, not just the result of what has been done to you. And this realization is not meant to burden you. It is meant to empower you. If your life is shaped by your choices, then you can choose again, and you can choose better. Self-awareness also protects you from self-deception, which is one of the greatest enemies of growth. Without awareness, you trick yourself into believing you are working harder than you really are, that your effort is greater than it actually is, that your excuses are legitimate instead of lazy. Self-deception feels comforting, it quietly kills progress. With awareness, however, You begin to catch yourself in the act. You hear your own excuses as they come. Instead of believing them, you challenge them. You notice when you are procrastinating, when you are avoiding, when you are lying to yourself. And that awareness gives you the power to choose differently in real time. It is not about perfection. It is about progress. And progress always begins with seeing clearly. Positive self-talk is a critical part of this process, because awareness without compassion turns into self-loathing, and self-loathing destroys growth. If you notice your flaws and then attack yourself with negative talk, I'm stupid, I'm lazy, I'll never change, you create shame, and shame does not inspire change, it paralyzes it. Instead, you must learn to pair honesty with encouragement. I see that I procrastinate, I am capable of discipline. I see that I make excuses, but I am strong enough to stop. I see that I avoid discomfort, but I can face it with courage. This is the balance of growth, honesty about where you are, combined with belief in where you can go. Awareness without self-belief leads to despair, but self-awareness with self-belief leads to transformation. To build self-awareness, practice paying attention to your thoughts, your emotions, and your behaviors without judgment. Notice the patterns, what triggers your excuses, what environments fuel your weakness, what people bring out your best, what times of day you feel strongest. Keep a journal, reflect daily, ask yourself questions, and listen to your own answers. Over time, you will begin to see connections that were invisible before, and those connections will reveal the roots of your struggles. Once you see the roots, you can pull them out instead of cutting the leaves. That is why some people fail to change. They address only the surface behaviors without understanding the deeper patterns. For example, someone may say, I need to stop wasting time on my phone. But until they realize that they use their phone to escape discomfort or avoid responsibility, keep repeating the behavior. Self-awareness digs beneath the surface and exposes the truth, and once the truth is visible, change becomes possible. The journey of self-awareness is never finished, because you are always growing, always evolving, and always facing new challenges. The more you practice it, the stronger it becomes, until awareness becomes a habit, a way of living, where you are constantly observing, learning, adjusting. And the reward is that you no longer live on autopilot, no longer trapped by unconscious habits. You live awake, alive, and intentional. You live as the author of your story instead of the prisoner of your patterns. So remember this. Growth begins the moment you decide to look honestly at yourself. It begins when you stop hiding from your flaws and start owning them, when you stop making excuses and start making changes, when you stop lying to yourself and start telling yourself the truth with compassion. If you want to force yourself to improve, cultivate the habit of self-awareness, because it is the foundation on which all other growth is built. Without it, you are blind, but with it, you can see, and when you can see, you can change. Discipline is the bridge between who you are and who you want to be. Without it, all the desire, motivation, and inspiration in the world will collapse the moment life becomes difficult. Full attention, because improvement is never about what you say you want. It is always about what you are willing to do when you don't feel like doing it. Motivation is temporary, it rises and falls with mood, energy, and circumstance, but discipline is permanent if you build it. It is the quiet, steady force that carries you forward even when excitement has faded, even when progress feels invisible, even when obstacles stack up against you. Of any person you admire for their success or strength. Athletes, leaders, artists, entrepreneurs. The common thread is not that they were always motivated. It is that they developed the discipline to show up regardless of motivation. Discipline is choosing long-term growth over short-term comfort, and that choice must be made over and over again until it becomes second nature. The truth is, discipline feels harsh at first. It feels like restriction, like denial, like you are forcing yourself into a box. But if you stay with it long enough, you begin to see that discipline is not punishment. It is freedom. Discipline is what allows you to build habits that liberate you from chaos. Discipline is what gives you the power to say no to distractions and yes to your purpose. Discipline is what frees you from being ruled by impulse and emotion, because instead of being tossed around by whatever you feel in the moment, you anchor yourself in what you have committed to. Imagine a student who only studies when they feel motivated. Their results will be weak, inconsistent, unreliable. Now imagine a student who studies every day at the same time, even when they are tired, even when they would rather do something else. Over time, their knowledge compounds, their confidence grows, and their results become undeniable. The difference is not talent, it is discipline. Discipline compounds like interest in a bank account. Every small deposit builds into something massive over time, but only if you keep depositing. Stop too soon, the results never show. This is why most people fail at self-improvement. They rely on feeling good to act, instead of acting regardless of feeling. Discipline is about controlling your mind before your mind controls you. When your inner voice whispers, "Not today, you can do it tomorrow," discipline answers, "No, today is exactly the day I do it." When your body says, "This is too hard, let's quit," discipline replies, "We keep going, because that is who we are." Discipline is not about cruelty. It is about loyalty to your own growth, about refusing to betray yourself when comfort tempts you to walk away. The beautiful thing about discipline is that it grows stronger the more you practice it. At first, it may feel unbearable to resist your impulses, but each time you do, you train your brain to follow through. You create evidence that you can be trusted with your own goals, and that evidence builds confidence. The person who disciplines themselves daily does not live with less joy. They live with more. They experience the joy of achievement, the joy of confidence, the joy of progress. Undisciplined people often feel free in the short term, but they eventually live with regret, shame, and frustration, because their lack of structure keeps them trapped in cycles of weakness. Discipline, on the other hand, may feel hard in the short term, but it creates pride, dignity, and power in the long term. Self-talk is critical here, because the mind resists discipline by telling you lies. You've done enough. It won't matter if you skip once. You deserve a break. Nobody will notice. Those lies may sound kind, but they are poison to growth. You must fight them with words of strength. Every step matters. My consistency defines me. I am stronger than my excuses. I do not need to feel like it to do it. This kind of self-talk turns discipline from a chore into an identity. You stop saying, "I am trying to be disciplined," and you start saying, "I am disciplined." That shift changes everything, because when discipline becomes part of who you are, you no longer negotiate with yourself about whether or not you will follow through. You simply do. Discipline also creates momentum, and momentum is one of the most powerful forces in life. At first, the effort feels heavy, like pushing a boulder uphill. As you continue, momentum builds and the effort becomes easier, almost automatic. What once felt impossible becomes routine. Waking up early, exercising, studying, working on your goals. These no longer feel like massive acts of willpower, they feel like your normal rhythm, because discipline has trained your body and mind to expect them. And once you have momentum, your growth accelerates. But the reverse is also true. Break discipline long enough, and you lose momentum, and starting again feels heavier than ever. This is why discipline requires daily attention. It is like a fire that must be fed, not occasionally, but consistently, or it dies out. Discipline also teaches you resilience. Life throws setbacks at you, and it will. Discipline is what keeps you from collapsing. Discipline is the voice that says, yes, this hurts, we keep going. Yes, this is hard, but quitting is not an option. Motivation may disappear in pain, but discipline endures. That is why people who build discipline are unstoppable. No matter what comes, they keep moving, because they have trained themselves to obey their commitments, not their emotions. To cultivate discipline, start small. Choose one habit and commit to it daily, no matter what. It could be 10 minutes of reading, a short workout, writing a single page, or practicing gratitude. Keep it simple, but keep it consistent. Every day you follow through, you send yourself a message: I am disciplined, I am capable, I am trustworthy. As that identity grows, you can take on bigger commitments. The key is not perfection. The key is persistence. Even if you stumble, return immediately, because the longer you stay away, the weaker your discipline becomes. Think of discipline as a muscle. Skip too many workouts, and the muscle atrophies. Train consistently, and it grows stronger. Discipline is not about never failing. It is about refusing to stay down when you fail. It is about returning, recommitting, and continuing until success is inevitable. So remember this: if you want to force yourself to improve, you cannot wait for motivation. You cannot rely on inspiration. You cannot depend on feeling good. You must build the discipline to act whether you feel like it or not. You must become the kind of person who does what is necessary, not just what is comfortable. Discipline will cost you comfort. Yes, it will give you confidence, freedom, and growth in return. And in the end, you will realize that discipline is not a punishment at all. It is the most powerful gift you can give yourself, the gift of becoming the person you were always meant to be. Purpose is the fire that fuels discipline, and without a clear vision of why you are pushing yourself to grow, discipline eventually feels like a heavy burden rather than a path to freedom. Because the human mind and body can endure incredible sacrifice when it believes in the reason behind it. But when there is no deeper why, effort feels empty, pointless, and exhausting. Purpose is what transforms discipline from punishment into passion, from obligation into opportunity, from mere survival into meaningful growth. If you wake up every day and force yourself to act without knowing why, your willpower will burn out quickly. But if you wake up with a clear sense of what you are working toward, your energy multiplies. Purpose is not about vague wishes like, I want to be successful, or I want to be happy. It is about defining who you want to become, how you want to live, and what impact you want to leave on the world. A person with no purpose drifts through life, chasing distractions, living for temporary pleasure, and wondering why nothing feels fulfilling. But a person with purpose wakes up each morning with direction, with clarity, resilience to keep going even when life becomes heavy. Purpose is the anchor that holds you steady in storms. It is the compass that guides you when the path is unclear. Without it, you may work hard but in circles. You may achieve but feel empty. You may improve in skills but not in meaning. Purpose gives context to effort. It makes the hard days worth enduring, and the sacrifices worth making. Think of a parent working 2 jobs to provide for their children. What gives them the strength to push through exhaustion is the purpose of giving their kids a better life. Think of an athlete training through pain and injury. What allows them to continue is the vision of the championship they are chasing. Think of an inventor facing years of failure. What drives them forward is the dream of bringing their creation into the world. In every story of resilience, purpose is the hidden engine. And here is the truth: you already have a purpose inside you, but it must be uncovered and clarified, because if it stays vague, it cannot give you power. To uncover it, ask yourself deep questions. Who do I want to become? What values do I want to live by? What legacy do I want to leave behind? What kind of life would make me proud on my final day? These questions pierce through surface desires and reveal the deeper reasons that truly matter. For some, purpose is family. For others it is contribution. For others it is mastery. For others it is service. But whatever it is, it must be personal, it must be meaningful, and it must be strong enough to carry you when motivation fades. Once you discover your purpose, you must remind yourself of it daily, because life will try to make you forget. Challenges, distractions, failures, and temptations will all try to pull you back into comfort, and only a strong connection to purpose will pull you forward. Positive self-talk is essential here, because purpose must be reinforced with language. Tell yourself, I am building myself for a reason. My struggle is not wasted. My sacrifice is fuel for my vision. I am becoming who I was meant to be. This kind of self-talk transforms pain into meaning. Instead of seeing obstacles as punishments, you see them as tests preparing you for your purpose. Instead of seeing discipline as deprivation, you see it as devotion to your mission. Purpose changes not only how you act, but how you interpret the world. Without purpose, every difficulty feels unfair, but with purpose, difficulty feels like training. Without purpose, setbacks break you, but with purpose, setbacks shape you. Without purpose, success feels shallow. With purpose, success feels like destiny fulfilled. To strengthen your purpose, connect it not only to yourself but also to others, because when your vision includes lifting others, it gains even more power. If your only reason for growth is selfish comfort, you will quit when it gets too hard. But if your reason for growth is to serve, to inspire, to provide, or to make the world better, you will find strength beyond yourself. That is why some of the most disciplined people in history were not motivated by personal pleasure, but by causes bigger than themselves. Freedom, justice, invention, art, faith, or love. Their purpose gave them a resilience that ordinary goals could never provide. This does not mean your purpose must be grand or famous. It only means it must be real, deeply felt, and significant to you. Once you know it, shape your daily actions around it, because purpose without practice is just a dream. Align your habits with your vision. If your purpose is health, actions must reflect that. If your purpose is knowledge, your discipline must fuel learning. If your purpose is service, your choices must prioritize contribution. The more aligned your actions are with your purpose, the more energy you will feel, even in difficulty, because your life will no longer feel like a random collection of tasks. It will feel like a mission. And missions give power. Purpose also protects you from comparison, because when you know your why, you stop being distracted by other people's paths. You realize that their goals are not your goals, their race is not your race, and their definition of success is not yours. Purpose frees you from chasing trends and applause, because you are no longer living for approval. You are living for alignment. This gives you peace, focus, and confidence. Every time doubt creeps in, return to your purpose. Every time you want to quit, remind yourself of your why. Every time you feel lost, use your vision as a compass. Over time, this practice becomes automatic. Your purpose becomes your inner voice, guiding you, strengthening you, and reminding you that the struggle is worth it. And as you continue, something incredible happens. Your purpose begins to shape not only your life but also the lives of those around you. People will notice your clarity, your resilience, your passion. They will be inspired to find their own purpose. This is the ripple effect of growth. You do not just change yourself, change the atmosphere around you. So remember this: discipline may be the bridge to growth, but purpose is the fire that keeps you crossing that bridge when the journey feels endless. If you want to force yourself to improve, not rely only on habits or willpower. Dig deeper, find your reason, define your vision, and tie your daily struggle to something bigger than comfort. With purpose, every step becomes meaningful, every sacrifice becomes sacred, and every act of discipline becomes a declaration of who you are becoming. Without purpose, growth feels heavy, but with purpose, growth feels inevitable. You are no longer just surviving the process. You are living your mission. Habits are the invisible architecture of your life, shaping your days, and therefore shaping your destiny. And if you truly want to force yourself to improve, you must stop relying on bursts of motivation, and instead design habits that pull you forward automatically. Because what you do consistently is infinitely more important than what you do occasionally. Many people think change happens through grand, dramatic efforts. In reality, change is built in the small, repeated actions that you perform every single day, often without thinking. This is both a danger and an opportunity. A danger if your habits are destructive, because they will quietly sabotage your future without you realizing it, and an opportunity if your habits are constructive. They will steadily build you into someone stronger, wiser, and more capable than you were before. The truth is, habits run most of your life. Studies show that up to 40% of daily behavior is habitual, meaning it is not decided in the moment, but performed automatically based on prior conditioning. If you do not consciously shape your habits, your environment, impulses, and past patterns will shape them for you. To take control of your growth, you must become a designer of habits, intentionally choosing what patterns you repeat until they become second nature. Think about it this way: brushing your teeth is not a struggle, because it is a habit. You do it without arguing with yourself, without needing motivation, without excuses. Imagine if reading, exercising, saving money, practicing gratitude, or working on your goals became just as automatic. That is the power of habit, but building new habits requires both strategy and persistence. First, you must start small, because the mind resists massive change. Try to overhaul your entire life in 1 week. You will likely fail, but if you commit to small, consistent changes, you will succeed. Instead of saying, "I will run 5 miles every day," start with 5 minutes of walking. Instead of saying, "I will read a book a week," start with 1 page a day. Instead of saying, "I will meditate for an hour," start with 2 minutes. The key is not the size of the habit, but the consistency, because small habits compound into massive transformation over time. This principle, often called the power of compounding, means that every repeated action is like a drop of water filling a jar. At first it seems insignificant. Over time the jar fills, and one day it overflows. That is how habits transform you. Second, you must attach new habits to existing ones, a method often called habit stacking. For example, if you want to practice gratitude, attach it to drinking your morning coffee each time you sip. One thing you are grateful for. If you want to do push-ups daily, attach them to brushing your teeth after you put down the toothbrush. 10 push-ups. Linking new habits to old ones anchors them in your routine and makes them harder to forget. Third, you must design your environment to support your habits, because willpower is weak, but environment is powerful. If you want to read more, books on your desk and nightstand. If you want to exercise more, keep your workout clothes where you can see them. If you want to eat healthier, remove junk food from your kitchen and replace it with nutritious options. Don't rely on self-control to resist temptation. Remove temptation from your environment. Small changes in environment lead to massive changes in behavior. Humans are deeply influenced by what surrounds them. Fourth, use positive self-talk to reinforce habits. Because your brain listens to your words. Keep saying, "I hate working out," or "I'm bad at staying consistent." You program yourself to resist habits. Instead say, "I am someone who takes care of my body. I enjoy the feeling of progress," or "I am consistent and disciplined." Over time, your identity will shift to match your words, and habits tied to identity are the strongest of all. If you merely try to do something, it is fragile. But if you see it as who you are, it becomes permanent. For example, instead of saying, "I'm trying to quit smoking," say, "I am not a smoker." Instead of saying, "I'm trying to run," say, "I am a runner." Habits connected to identity last because we fight to stay consistent with how we see ourselves. Fifth, track your habits, because what gets measured gets improved. Keep a journal, use a calendar, or check off boxes each day you complete your habit. This gives you visual proof of progress, and progress fuels motivation. A streak of 10 days without missing builds pride and momentum, and that momentum pushes you to keep going. Sixth, prepare for failure, because building habits is never perfect. You will miss days, you will slip. But failure does not destroy a habit. Quitting does. The danger is not missing once, the danger is missing twice. Twice becomes a pattern. When you stumble, forgive yourself quickly, recommit immediately, and move on. Discipline is not about perfection, is about persistence. Seventh, celebrate your habits, because reward strengthens repetition. Each time you follow through, give yourself a small reward. If it is just a moment of pride, a smile, or words like, "Well done." This conditions your brain to associate the habit with pleasure instead of pain, making it easier to repeat. Over time, the habit itself becomes the reward. You start to crave the feeling of growth, the feeling of strength, feeling of consistency. The joy of progress becomes its own motivation. Remember, habits can either build you or break you. Destructive habits are just as powerful as constructive ones. Overeating, procrastination, negative self-talk, mindless scrolling, complaining. All of these also become automatic if repeated often enough. That is why improvement is not just about adding good habits, also about breaking bad ones. To break a bad habit, you must make it invisible, unattractive, difficult, and unsatisfying. Remove triggers from your environment, reframe the habit so you see it as disgusting or harmful instead of pleasurable. Make it harder to perform by adding obstacles, and deny it rewards by linking it with pain or disappointment. Over time, the habit weakens and fades. Replace it with a positive habit, because nature abhors a vacuum. If you only try to stop, you will feel empty, but if you replace, you will feel fulfilled. The deeper lesson here is that habits are destiny, And the most successful people are not those with the most willpower, but those with the best habits. They have simply automated excellence. They don't wake up debating whether to work out, they just do. They don't wonder if they should read, they just read. They don't negotiate with themselves about showing up, they just show up. This automation frees mental energy for creativity, problem solving, and growth. Imagine how much stronger, smarter, more capable you will be when your best actions no longer require a fight, but flow naturally as habits. And remember, small habits matter just as much as big ones. A single glass of water instead of soda, a few minutes of journaling, one moment of positive self-talk. These are not trivial, they are seeds of transformation. Over months and years, they create a life completely different from the one you are living now. So, if you truly want to force yourself to improve, stop waiting for motivation, stop relying on willpower, and start designing habits. Build them patiently, reinforce them with self-talk, protect them with environment, track them with care, and celebrate them with gratitude. Your failure is not the opposite of growth. It is the essential ingredient of it, and until you learn to see failure not as an enemy, but as a teacher, you will remain trapped in cycles of fear, avoidance, and stagnation, because improvement only happens when you stretch beyond your current ability, and stretching inevitably means stumbling, falling, and making mistakes. Most people live their entire lives avoiding failure, constructing safe routines, repeating only what they know, hiding from any risk that might expose their weakness. But this avoidance does not protect them. It suffocates them, because the very thing they fear is the very thing that would make them strong. Think of a child learning to walk. They fall again and again. Yet nobody shames them for it, because we all understand that falling is part of walking. As adults, we forget this truth, and begin to see falling as proof that we are incapable. The truth is, failure is the tuition you pay for mastery. Every failure contains lessons you could never learn through success alone. If you look at the lives of great inventors, athletes, artists, and leaders, you will see not smooth paths of victory, but mountains of failures they had to climb. Thomas Edison famously said, he did not fail thousands of times while inventing the light bulb. He discovered thousands of ways that didn't work. Each discovery brought him closer to the one that did. Michael Jordan has spoken about missing thousands of shots and losing hundreds of games, yet he credits those very failures as the reason he became one of the greatest basketball players in history. J.K. Rowling's first Harry Potter book was rejected by 12 publishers, and it was only because she refused to see those rejections as permanent failure that the world eventually received a story that touched millions. These examples are not rare exceptions. They are proof of a principle: failure is the path, not the obstacle. But to benefit from failure, must change the way you talk to yourself about it. Most people fail and then tell themselves, "I'm not good enough, I'll never succeed, I should give up," and this self-talk poisons the lesson. Instead, you must say, "This is feedback, this is data, this is a step forward, this is proof that I am in the arena while others are hiding in the stands." Positive self-talk turns failure from a wound into a workout. When you treat each mistake as evidence of growth, you no longer fear mistakes, you embrace them. Of course, failure still hurts, because it comes with disappointment, embarrassment, and sometimes loss. But pain itself is not the problem. Pain without meaning is the problem. Purpose and perspective transform pain into growth, and the way you speak to yourself in moments of failure determines whether you break or build. If your self-talk is cruel, failure becomes trauma. But if your self-talk is compassionate and constructive, failure becomes training. You must learn to analyze your failures with honesty, but without judgment. Ask yourself, what exactly went wrong? What can I learn from this? How will I do better next time? This mindset is what psychologists call a growth mindset. The belief that skills and intelligence are not fixed but developed through effort, struggle, mistakes. People with a growth mindset thrive on challenges and see failure as a natural part of progress, while those with a fixed mindset avoid challenges because they think failure proves they are incapable. The difference between these two mindsets is not ability, it is perspective. And perspective is built through repeated practice of reframing failure. Start small. When you make a mistake in your day, instead of insulting yourself, remind yourself, this is how I learn. Every expert was once a beginner. I am collecting lessons, not failures. The more you practice this self-talk, the more natural it becomes. Eventually, failure no longer paralyzes you, it energizes you. Another truth about failure is that it reveals character, because anyone can appear strong when everything is easy, but the real test of who you are comes when you fall short. Do you quit, blame others, or hide? Or do you stand back up, own your mistakes, and try again with greater wisdom? Every time you rise after failure, you forge resilience, and resilience is the foundation of growth. Without resilience, success crumbles the moment it meets resistance. With resilience, repeated setbacks cannot stop you. This is why some people succeed after years of struggle while others give up after one rejection. The difference is not talent, but their relationship with failure. Resilient people expect failure, embrace failure, and prepare to use it. They don't see failure as permanent, they see it as temporary feedback on the road to improvement. If you adopt this mindset, you will no longer be afraid to try bold things, because even if you fail, you know you are moving forward. And the more you fail, the more fearless you become, because you prove to yourself again and again that failure does not destroy you. It strengthens you. Imagine if you lived with that kind of freedom, no longer paralyzed by the fear of rejection, embarrassment, or imperfection, but excited to experiment, risk, and grow. That freedom is available, but it requires you to reframe every failure as growth. One way to accelerate this is to deliberately seek small failures. Push yourself into situations where mistakes are likely, because the more you practice failing, the less intimidating it becomes. For example, if you are afraid of speaking in public, force yourself to speak in small groups again and again, knowing you will stumble, but also knowing that every stumble is a step closer to confidence. If you are afraid of rejection, practice asking for things you don't expect to get. Each no toughens your skin and brings you closer to a yes. This is called failure practice. And it is a powerful way to build resilience, because it removes the mystery of failure and replaces it with familiarity. Another crucial step is to separate your identity from your performance. Many people fail and think, I am a failure. But that is a lie. You may fail at an action, but you are not defined by one event. You are a learner. Learners must fail to grow. Reframe your identity. I am not a failure. I am someone who fails forward. I am someone who learns quickly. I am someone who grows through mistakes. This separation protects your confidence while allowing you to absorb the lesson. Remember too that failure is not always a sign that you are weak. It can also be a sign that you are daring greatly. If you never fail, it probably means you are not aiming high enough, not risking enough, not growing enough. Playing small keeps you safe but stagnant. Playing big guarantees failure along the way, but also guarantees growth. The people who achieve extraordinary things are not those who never failed, those who failed more times than the average person even tried. They were willing to risk, to fall, to look foolish, because they knew that each failure was an investment in mastery. And so, if you want to force yourself to improve, you must fall in love with failure, or at least stop fearing it. You must remind yourself daily failure is feedback, failure is growth, failure is progress, failure is proof that I am alive and trying. Every time you fall, stand up stronger. Every time you stumble, take the lesson and walk again. Over time, you will realize that failure was never your enemy. It was your most loyal teacher, guiding you step by step into the person you were meant to become. Your environment is one of the most powerful forces shaping your behavior, your mindset, and ultimately your growth. And if you want to force yourself to improve, you must stop relying solely on inner strength and begin designing an outer world that supports the person you are becoming, because the truth is that willpower alone is fragile, but when aligned with an environment that pushes you forward instead of pulling you back, your growth becomes almost inevitable. Too many people try to change their lives while living in environments filled with triggers that keep them locked in old patterns. And then they blame themselves for lacking discipline, when the real problem is that they are fighting an uphill battle against surroundings designed to keep them weak. If you want to eat healthier, but your kitchen is stocked with junk food, you are setting yourself up to fail. If you want to focus but your phone is always buzzing with notifications, you are sabotaging yourself. If you want to dream bigger, but surround yourself with negative, cynical people who mock ambition, you are draining your energy before you even begin. The secret is not to make life harder, but to make it easier by creating an environment that aligns with your goals. Think of your environment as an invisible hand constantly pushing you in one direction, either toward growth or toward destruction. To change your life, you must take control of that hand. Start with your physical environment, because what you see, hear, touch daily shapes your actions more than you realize. If you want to read more, keep books visible and within reach. If you want to exercise more, your workout clothes ready and accessible. If you want to create, organize your workspace so it inspires focus instead of distraction. Remove clutter, because clutter is not just physical, it is mental, and when your environment is messy, your mind feels heavy. Create spaces that feel like invitations to action. Them your full attention. Even something as simple as putting a glass of water by your bed can remind you to hydrate first thing in the morning. Design cues that trigger the behavior you want. At the same time, eliminate cues that trigger the behavior you don't want. Delete toxic apps. Silence distracting notifications. Throw away unhealthy food. And stop exposing yourself to environments that weaken you. Make bad habits harder and good habits easier. If you want to stop wasting hours on social media, log out after each use, uninstall the apps from your phone, or keep your phone in another room while you work. If you want to stop procrastinating, remove distractions from your desk before you sit down. Small changes in environment create massive changes in behavior, because you stop relying on raw willpower and instead allow your surroundings to guide you like a river flowing in the right direction. But environment is not just physical, it is also social, and the people you spend time with influence you more than almost anything else. You may believe you are independent, but humans are deeply wired to mirror those around them. If you spend time with people who complain, procrastinate, and avoid growth, You will unconsciously absorb their habits, their language, and their worldview. If you surround yourself with people who push limits, who think positively, who live with discipline and ambition, you will rise to meet their energy. Jim Rohn famously said, "You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with." And whether or not you agree with the exact number, the principle is undeniable. Your circle shapes your standard. If you want to force yourself to improve, audit your relationships. Who drains your energy? Who inspires you? Keeps you small? Who makes you think bigger? Do not be afraid to limit time with those who sabotage your growth, even if they are friends or family. Protecting your energy is not cruelty. It is survival. Seek out communities, mentors, and peers who live at the level you want to reach, and expose yourself to their standards until they become your new normal. Growth accelerates when you are pulled by others moving in the same direction. This is why people train harder with workout partners, learn faster in study groups, achieve more in mastermind circles. Social environment multiplies effort. But beyond physical and social environments, there is also the digital environment, and in today's world, this is just as powerful. What you consume online daily programs your brain. If your feed is filled with negativity, gossip, shallow entertainment, and outrage, your mind will reflect that chaos. If your feed is filled with inspiration, knowledge, and examples of discipline, your mind will mirror that too. You cannot expect to think clearly if you are drowning in digital garbage. Curate your digital diet with as much care as you curate your physical diet, because both feed your mind. Follow people who inspire, unfollow people who drain, limit your exposure to negativity, and instead of aimlessly scrolling, choose intentional consumption. Your digital environment can either distract you for hours or fuel your growth in seconds. It depends on what you allow in. The final environment you must consider is your inner environment, your thoughts, beliefs, self-talk. Because no matter how optimized your outer world is, if your inner world is toxic, you will sabotage yourself from within. This is why positive self-talk is non-negotiable. Every day, you are creating an environment in your mind with the words you repeat to yourself. Keep saying, "I can't, I'm weak, I'll fail." Your inner environment becomes a prison. Amount of physical or social optimization can save you. But if you say, "I can, I am capable, I am improving, I am disciplined," your inner environment becomes fertile soil for growth. The outer world sets the stage, but the inner world writes the script. To grow, both must be aligned. And when they are, growth feels almost natural, because instead of fighting resistance at every turn, carried by an environment that supports your mission. Imagine trying to row a boat upstream. It is exhausting, slow, and frustrating. That is what growth feels like when your environment is against you. Now imagine rowing downstream with the current carrying you. That is what growth feels like when your environment is aligned. Same boat, same effort, different result. That is the power of environment. The secret, then, is not to make life harder, but to make it easier by designing your world with intention. Do not leave your environment to chance, because chance will not serve you. Take control. Remove the triggers of weakness. Plant the cues of strength. Surround yourself with people who elevate you. Feed your mind with inspiration. Speak to yourself with words of power. When you do this, you stop forcing growth and start flowing with it, because everything around you conspires to keep you moving forward. And when your environment carries you, consistency no longer feels like a battle. It feels like the natural rhythm of your life. This is how you create lasting transformation. not through endless willpower, but through environments that make the right choice the easy choice, the wrong choice the hard choice, growth the only choice. Consistency is the hidden power that separates those who dream from those who achieve. Because anyone can start, one can be excited at the beginning, anyone can work hard for a short burst of time, but very few can stay the course day after day, month after month, year after year, especially when the initial fire has cooled and the grind feels endless. Yet it is this steady, unglamorous persistence that produces extraordinary results. Improvement is not built in giant leaps but in small steps repeated without end. And the greatest mistake people make is underestimating the power of those small steps, quitting too soon because they don't see immediate results, never realizing that consistency is like a slow, burning fuse that eventually creates an explosion of growth. Consider how water shapes stone not through sudden force, but through years of steady dripping, how trees grow not in a single season, but through the compounding of countless days of sunlight, water, and nourishment. Your growth is no different. Every time you show up, even in small ways, you are adding a brick to the structure of the person you are becoming, and over time that structure becomes unshakable. But the challenge is that consistency often feels boring, and boredom is the silent killer of growth. The mind craves novelty, excitement, and quick rewards, and when the early thrill of improvement fades, it begins to whisper lies. This isn't working. You're wasting your time. You should try something new. If you listen, you abandon the very habits that would have transformed you, trading steady progress for the shallow thrill of starting over, and you repeat this cycle again and again without ever reaching mastery. The antidote to this is learning to fall in love with the process. Shift your focus from the result you haven't reached yet to the act of showing up today. Consistency is not about perfection, it is about persistence. It is not about never missing, it is about always returning. A single missed day will not ruin you, but quitting will. The danger is not falling, the danger is staying down. This is why positive self-talk is crucial for consistency, because your mind will invent excuses every single day. Must learn to answer those excuses with truth. When the mind says, "One day off won't hurt," you answer, "One day builds momentum. One day matters. I am the kind of person who shows up." When the mind says, "This is too hard," you reply, "Hard is how I grow. Growth is why I started." When the mind says, "It doesn't matter," you remind yourself, "Every action compounds, and every action defines me." This dialogue with yourself is the difference between slipping into old patterns and standing firm in new ones. Another secret of consistency is designing systems instead of obsessing over goals. Goals are important because they give direction, but systems are what keep you moving when the goal feels far away. A runner who only focuses on finishing a marathon will quit during training when fatigue sets in, but a runner who builds a system of running every morning, no matter the distance, will eventually build the endurance to finish without even realizing it. Goals give you the vision, but systems create the consistency. Ask yourself, what daily actions, no matter how small, will make my goal inevitable? Then commit to those actions relentlessly. Consistency also requires patience, because results are delayed, and delayed results are where most people give up. We live in a world addicted to instant gratification, but growth operates on delayed gratification, where the seeds you plant today may not sprout for weeks, months, or even years. If you cannot endure the waiting, you cannot enjoy the harvest. This is why consistency feels hard, because it demands faith in invisible progress. You must believe that every repetition matters when no one is watching, even when nothing seems to be changing. That belief is not blind. It is rooted in the universal law of compounding. Repeated effort always produces results, just not always on your timeline. To strengthen your patience, celebrate small wins. Not wait for the giant breakthrough to feel proud. Take pride in the fact that you showed up today, that you honored your commitment, that you stayed true to your word. Every time you celebrate consistency, you reinforce it. Another obstacle to consistency is comparison. When you measure your progress against others, you will always feel too slow, too small, or too weak. Comparison destroys consistency because it makes you chase someone else's timeline instead of honoring your own. Your job is not to be faster than anyone else. It is to be faithful to your path. Speak to yourself with compassion. I am not in competition with others. I am in competition with my past self, and as long as I am showing up, I am winning. This mindset keeps you steady, even when others seem far ahead. Consistency also requires resilience, because setbacks will come, life will interfere, and progress will stall. Without resilience, you will see these interruptions as proof that you should quit, but with resilience you see them as part of the journey. Consistency is not a straight line, it is a cycle of progress, setback, and recommitment. The true test of consistency is not how you act when things are smooth, but how quickly you return after they are disrupted. Let one bad week become a bad month, or one missed habit become a lost year. Always return, no matter how messy the restart feels. That is consistency. And remember, consistency is not just about what you do, but also about who you become. Each act of showing up builds trust with yourself, proving that you can rely on your own word, and that trust is the foundation of confidence. Full attention. Most people lack confidence not because they are incapable, but because they have broken promises to themselves too many times. When you say you will do something, and then you actually do it, again and again, you rebuild that trust, and eventually your identity shifts. You stop saying, "I hope I can be disciplined," and you start saying, "I am disciplined." You stop hoping you'll be consistent, and you become the kind of person who simply is consistent. Identity level consistency is unshakable because it no longer depends on effort. It flows naturally from who you are. And when consistency becomes identity, growth becomes inevitable. So understand this: the people you admire, the people who seem superhuman in their achievements, are not powered by endless motivation or talent beyond measure. They are powered by consistency, by the boring, repetitive, invisible discipline of showing up day after day when nobody is watching. If you want to force yourself to improve, not chase intensity, chase consistency. Do not ask, "How fast can I change?" Ask, "How long can I keep showing up?" Because in the end, greatness is not built in sudden explosions but in steady sparks that never die out. Stay consistent, and one day the world will call you disciplined, dedicated and unstoppable, but you will know the truth. You were simply consistent. Failure is not the enemy of growth, but the teacher that shapes it. The way you interpret and respond to failure determines whether you rise stronger or remain stuck. Because, while most people treat failure as proof that they are not good enough, those who truly grow treat it as feedback, as information, as a stepping stone toward mastery. To force yourself to improve, you must rewire your relationship with failure, because as long as you fear it, you will avoid risks, play small, and live in comfort, but the comfort zone is a graveyard where potential goes to die. Think about every person you admire: entrepreneurs, artists, athletes, leaders. They all failed repeatedly, but what separated them from the masses was not that they avoided failure, but that they used it. Thomas Edison famously said, "I have not failed, I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." And that is not just a clever quote, it is a mindset, a way of seeing every setback as data, not doom. You try something, and it doesn't work. That is not the end. It is simply one path crossed off the map, bringing you closer to the right one. Yet many people let failure define them. They fall once and they label themselves a failure, not realizing that failure is an event, not an identity. You are not a failure just because you experienced one. You only become a failure when you decide to stop trying. This is why reframing is so important. You must stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and start asking, "What is this teaching me?" That one shift transforms failure from a wall into a doorway. When you embrace failure as feedback, you begin to take bolder action, because you no longer tie your self-worth to the outcome. You understand that every attempt, win or lose, is progress. Attempt itself is proof of courage. And over time, the more you fail, the more resilient you become. Each failure desensitizes you to the sting of rejection and sharpens your ability to adapt. Failure, then, becomes a training ground for strength. The people who grow fastest are not those who never fall, but those who fall often and get up quickly. They are willing to experiment, to test, risk embarrassment, because they understand that the only real danger is stagnation. Avoiding failure means avoiding growth, but seeking growth guarantees occasional failure, so the choice is clear: embrace it or remain small. Another crucial point is learning to separate outcome from effort. Sometimes you will do everything right, give everything you have, still not achieve the result you want. That is not wasted effort. It is training. Every repetition strengthens you, if the scoreboard doesn't reflect it yet. Failure refines skills, reveals weaknesses, and highlights blind spots you would never notice if you succeeded instantly. Success hides flaws, but failure exposes them. Exposure is the first step to correction. If you never fail, you never see where you need to improve. In this sense, failure is not the opposite of success, but the foundation of it. The key is how you process failure emotionally. Many people take it personally. They see a failed attempt as proof of their inadequacy, and their inner dialogue turns cruel. "I'm not good enough. I'll never succeed. What's the point?" This self-talk becomes poison, paralyzing them before they even try again. To grow, you must replace that self-talk with empowering language. "This attempt didn't work, but I'm learning, I'm improving, I'm one step closer." The way you speak to yourself after failure is the difference between quitting and rising. Train your inner voice to sound like a coach, not a critic. Another important skill is extracting lessons quickly. Do not dwell on failure longer than necessary. Reflect, extract the lesson, and move forward. Ask yourself what worked, what didn't, what will I do differently next time? This turns failure into a feedback loop instead of a permanent wound. The faster you can turn pain into learning, the faster you grow. And sometimes, failure redirects you to a better path. Many people cling to one rigid vision of success, and when they fail at it, they feel destroyed, not realizing that failure is often life's way of saying, "This is not your road, here's a better one." Some failures are blessings in disguise, freeing you from paths that would have wasted your potential. Trust that failure can be redirection, not just rejection. But to see it that way, must drop the ego that insists everything must go according to your plan. Growth requires humility. the humility to admit you don't know everything, humility to accept correction, the humility to start again. Without humility, failure feels unbearable. With humility, failure feels instructive. Remember, the world only sees the highlights of successful people, not the failures hidden behind the curtain. You see the bestseller, not the 10 unpublished manuscripts. You see the Olympic medal, not the years of losses. You see the thriving business, not the bankruptcies. Do not be fooled into thinking that success came without failure. Every overnight success is the result of years of trial, error, and resilience. Your own journey will be no different. The more comfortable you become with failure, the more unstoppable you become. Nothing can intimidate you anymore. You lose the fear of embarrassment, the fear of rejection, the fear of imperfection. Start playing the game of life with boldness, knowing that failure is not fatal but fuel. To force yourself to improve, you must not only endure failure, but actively seek the lessons it offers. And when you change your relationship with failure, everything changes. You take more action, you risk more, you grow faster, and eventually, the same failures that once paralyzed you become the very stories of resilience and wisdom that define your character. Growth, after all, not about never falling, it is about falling forward. Every stumble carries you further than standing still. So stop fearing failure and start using it, 'cause if you can transform failure from a chain into a ladder, nothing can stop your ascent. Discipline is the bridge between goals and achievement, silent force that turns intentions into reality, and without it, even the most inspiring dreams collapse into nothing more than wishful thinking. Because motivation is fleeting, emotions are unstable, but discipline is the steady hand that carries you through storms, boredom, resistance until the mission is complete. And to force yourself to improve, you must learn to build discipline, not as a punishment, but as a lifestyle. Chosen alignment of your actions with your values, regardless of how you feel in the moment. Too many people wait for the perfect mood, perfect burst of energy, or the perfect conditions to act, but those conditions rarely come, and waiting for them is a trap that keeps you stagnant. While discipline says, I move whether I feel like it or not. My commitment is stronger than my comfort. Discipline is freedom disguised as effort, because when you train yourself to do what is hard, you gain the freedom to live as you want. When you avoid discipline, you become a slave to impulses, distractions, and emotions that pull you in every direction. Think of an athlete who trains daily, not because every day feels good, but because the discipline to train builds strength, resilience, and readiness, and when competition arrives, they are free to perform at their highest level because their preparation has been secured. In life, you are the athlete, and your goals are the competition, and without discipline, you enter the arena unprepared. Building discipline begins with small daily actions. Discipline is like a muscle that strengthens with use. Do not start by demanding perfection from yourself. Start by honoring simple commitments. Wake up when you say you will. Finish what you start. Keep the promises you make to yourself. Because each time you do, you are laying a brick in the foundation of self-trust, and self-trust is the heart of discipline. The more you keep your word to yourself, the easier it becomes to act in alignment with your values, even when emotions resist. But discipline is not only about action, it is also about restraint, ability to say no to temptations that derail your growth. Every no you say to distraction is a yes to your purpose. Every time you resist the urge to procrastinate, to indulge in short-term pleasure, to give in to laziness, you strengthen your willpower, Willpower compounds like interest, growing stronger the more you use it. Yet discipline should not be confused with harshness or self-punishment. Discipline is rooted in self-respect, not self-hatred. It is saying, I respect myself too much to let my lower impulses rule me. It is choosing the action that aligns with your highest self rather than indulging your weakest self. This perspective transforms discipline from a burden into an act of self-love. Imagine the parent who enforces rules for their child, not out of cruelty, but out of care, because they know structure leads to growth. You must be that parent to yourself, firm but compassionate, strict but loving, creating the structure that will allow your future self to thrive. One of the most effective ways to cultivate discipline is through routines, because routines reduce the number of daily decisions you must make, and decision fatigue is a major enemy of discipline. When you automate your habits through routine, you preserve willpower for the moments it is truly needed. Waking up at the same time, setting a consistent time for exercise, designating hours for focused work. These routines create momentum, and momentum makes discipline easier. Another tool is accountability, because discipline is strengthened when others hold you to your word. Share your goals with someone you respect, join communities that reward commitment, or work with mentors who will not accept excuses. External accountability acts as reinforcement until your internal accountability is unshakable. Still, the highest form of discipline is self-accountability, when you hold yourself to a higher standard, even when no one is watching, because true growth happens in the unseen hours, the moments where only you know whether you followed through. And here, positive self-talk plays a crucial role. Many people sabotage discipline with a harsh, critical voice, calling themselves lazy, weak, or worthless. But shame does not build discipline, it breaks it. Instead, self-talk that is firm but empowering. I am capable of discipline, I choose discipline, I am stronger than my excuses. This language strengthens identity, and identity drives behavior. If you see yourself as someone disciplined, will naturally act in disciplined ways. But if you keep telling yourself, I have no discipline, you will fulfill that prophecy, speak the identity you want into existence, and back it with consistent action. Discipline also requires vision. Without a compelling why, discipline feels like meaningless suffering. You must connect your daily sacrifices to a larger purpose, a vision of the life you are building, because when you see the future reward clearly, the present discomfort feels bearable. The student who studies late at night is not just memorizing facts, they are building the foundation for their future career. The entrepreneur who works long hours is not just sending emails, they are shaping the destiny of their company. The athlete running sprints is not just sweating, they are preparing to win. Your discipline today is the down payment on your dreams tomorrow. Your why is strong, your discipline will endure. Yet discipline is not about rigidity. It is about consistency with flexibility. Life will bring unexpected events, setbacks, and challenges. Discipline is not destroyed by these, it adapts. It bends but does not break. The disciplined person knows how to adjust their plan without abandoning their commitment. If you miss a workout, you return the next day. Fall off track, you restart without delay. Discipline is not about never falling. It is about never staying down. And over time, discipline evolves from effort into identity. What once felt forced becomes natural. The person who once had to push themselves to exercise now feels strange without it. The person who once had to battle to wake up early now does it automatically. This is the power of discipline. It reshapes not only your habits but your very sense of self. And when discipline becomes identity, growth becomes inevitable because you no longer ask, "Will I do this?" The answer is always yes. You do it because it is who you are. So remember this: motivation may start you, but only discipline will finish you. Motivation is like a spark, but discipline is the firewood that keeps the flame alive through the night. If you want to force yourself to improve, stop relying on fleeting bursts of energy and build the steady engine of discipline. Say yes to your commitments, say no to your distractions, and honor your word to yourself until discipline is no longer a battle but a way of life. Because in the end, it is not the grand gestures that transform you, but the small disciplined choices repeated relentlessly. And when you master those, there is nothing you cannot achieve. Growth is impossible without discomfort, because comfort is the enemy of progress. And if you want to force yourself to improve, you must learn not just to endure discomfort, but to embrace it as a signal that you are on the right path. Everything you want, strength, confidence, skill, resilience, lives on the other side of discomfort, and the sooner you accept that, sooner you will stop resisting it and start using it. Most people spend their lives running from discomfort, designing routines and habits that keep them safe, predictable, and unchallenged, but safety and predictability are prisons disguised as peace, because while they keep you comfortable, they also keep you small. Every breakthrough you will ever have is born in a moment of discomfort. The awkward first attempt at a skill, the painful workout, terrifying conversation, the uncertain leap into the unknown. Discomfort is the price of entry for a better life. But the problem is that our brains are wired for survival, not growth, and survival prefers comfort, safety, and certainty, which means your instincts will always whisper, "Stay here, don't push too hard, avoid the pain," even when the pain is exactly what you need. To grow, override those instincts, retrain your relationship with discomfort, and recognize it as a teacher, not an enemy. When your muscles burn in the gym, that discomfort is the signal that growth is happening. When your mind struggles to focus while learning something new, that discomfort is the signal that your brain is forming new connections. When your heart races before a big presentation, that discomfort is the signal that you are stepping into courage. Discomfort is evidence of expansion, and if you are not feeling it regularly, it means you are not stretching enough. One of the most powerful mindset shifts you can adopt is this: comfort is a cage, discomfort is a compass. Time you feel discomfort, you are being pointed toward growth. Instead of asking, "How can I avoid this?" ask, "What is this discomfort teaching me?" This reframe turns what most people run from into what you run toward. But embracing discomfort does not mean reckless suffering. It means intentional exposure to challenges that expand your capacity. It is about deliberately putting yourself in situations where you feel stretched but not destroyed, challenged but not crushed. This is known as the growth zone, the space just beyond your comfort zone where real development happens. If you stay too comfortable, you stagnate. Push too far too fast, you burn out. But if you live in the growth zone, constantly leaning into manageable discomfort, you steadily build resilience and strength. The key is progressive exposure. Just as muscles adapt to heavier weights over time, your mind adapts to greater challenges the more you face them. Start small. Speak up in a meeting if you normally stay silent. Wake up an hour earlier than usual. Take a cold shower. Each act of discomfort is a training session for your resilience. Over time, what once felt unbearable becomes normal, and you realize that discomfort was never the enemy. It was the threshold. This is where positive self-talk becomes essential, because when you are in discomfort, your mind will invent reasons to quit. It will say, "This is too much, you can't handle it, why are you doing this?" And in that moment, your self-talk must answer with strength. "This is growth. I am capable, I can endure, I am becoming stronger." The words you choose in discomfort can either amplify the pain or transform it into fuel. Train your inner voice to be a coach, not a critic, and discomfort becomes easier to carry. Another important principle is that discomfort exposes character. When everything is easy, anyone can act disciplined, kind, or focused, but when discomfort arrives, the truth of who you are is revealed. Quit at the first sign of difficulty, or do you persist? Do you complain, or do you adapt? Do you panic, or do you breathe and move forward? Discomfort is the great revealer, stripping away illusions and showing you your true level of resilience. But here's the beauty: character is not fixed, built, and every time you endure discomfort with strength, you are forging a new version of yourself, tougher, braver, and more capable than before. That is why people who chase comfort remain fragile, while those who lean into discomfort become unshakable. The world respects strength, and strength is born from discomfort. Yet too many people misunderstand discomfort as punishment, when in reality it is preparation. Every moment of discomfort is preparing you for a bigger challenge ahead, sharpening your endurance so that when life throws storms at you, withstand them. Without intentional discomfort, the unexpected discomforts of life will break you. But if you have trained in discomfort, you will meet them with calm and resilience. This is why soldiers train in harsh conditions, why athletes push their bodies to exhaustion, why entrepreneurs take risks again and again, because they know discomfort is the only way to be ready for what's coming. And you must apply this same principle to your own life. Train in discomfort, so that life cannot break you. Let us be clear. Discomfort alone does not guarantee growth. If you simply suffer without reflection, you waste the lesson. You must pair discomfort with awareness, asking yourself, what am I learning? How am I adapting? What strengths am I building? This conscious processing turns pain into progress. Otherwise, discomfort can become meaningless struggle. The goal is not to chase pain blindly, but to embrace the right kind of discomfort. The discomfort that comes from building, stretching, and expanding. Discomfort of discipline, not the discomfort of destruction. The discomfort of lifting weights, not the discomfort of carrying unnecessary burdens. Discomfort of practicing a skill, not the discomfort of stagnation. One builds you, the other breaks you. Choose wisely. And here's the paradox. More you embrace discomfort, the more comfortable you become with life itself. While others panic at the first sign of difficulty, you remain calm because you have trained in the fire. Discomfort becomes your normal, and suddenly, challenges that once terrified you now feel manageable. That is freedom, the freedom to pursue any goal without being paralyzed by fear of discomfort. So understand, this comfort may feel good in the short term, but it will cost you your potential in the long term. Discomfort may feel unpleasant now, but it will reward you with growth, strength, and resilience for the rest of your life. If you want to force yourself to improve, stop asking for an easier path and start asking for a stronger back. Stop seeking comfort and start seeking challenges. Stop fearing discomfort and start honoring it as the proof that you are alive, growing, and moving forward. Because in the end, life will always contain discomfort. You cannot escape it. The question is whether you will face the discomfort of growth or the discomfort of regret. Choose growth, and every moment of discomfort becomes not a curse but a gift, shaping you into the person you were meant to be. Our habits are the architecture of your life, small, repeated actions that quietly but powerfully shape your future. And if you want to force yourself to improve, you must stop focusing only on big goals and start focusing on the habits that will make those goals inevitable. Success is never the result of one dramatic act, but of hundreds of tiny choices compounded over time. The truth is that your habits will either build you or break you, move you forward or hold you back, elevate you or trap you. So the question is not whether you have habits, but whether those habits are serving your highest vision or sabotaging it. Every morning you wake up, the chain of your habits begins. How you start your day, what you feed your mind, how you use your time, how you handle stress. And those small choices are adding up to either create the person you want to be or the person you fear becoming. The danger is that habits feel invisible, automatic, and harmless, which is why most people ignore them, but that invisibility is precisely what makes them powerful, because they operate without your conscious awareness, running silently in the background, programming your behavior, shaping your thoughts, and steering your life. To grow, you must bring those hidden habits into the light. Examine them honestly, and ask, are these actions pulling me closer to my goals or dragging me away from them? The first step is awareness, because you cannot change what you do not notice. Track your habits for a week without judgment, simply observing how you spend your time, how you react to emotions, what you repeatedly do, and you will discover patterns that either support or sabotage your growth. Once you have awareness, the next step is replacement, not just removal, because trying to eliminate a bad habit without replacing it leaves a vacuum that your brain will naturally fill with something else, often worse. If you want to quit scrolling mindlessly, replace it with reading a few pages of a book. If you want to stop eating junk, replace it with preparing healthier alternatives. If you want to reduce procrastination, replace it with a ritual of setting small, immediate tasks. Growth comes not from trying to erase your old self, but from consciously building your new self through better habits. And the good news is that habits compound, meaning the longer you sustain them, the more powerful they become. Like interest on an investment, a single workout may not change your body, but 100 workouts will. One day of reading may not transform your mind, but a year of reading daily will. One morning of waking up early may not revolutionize your productivity, but doing it consistently for months will. This compounding effect works for both good and bad habits, which means every day you repeat a destructive habit, you are digging a deeper hole. Every day you repeat a constructive habit, you are laying another brick in the foundation of success. So ask yourself, what compounding effect am I creating right now? Am I building a future of strength, clarity, and discipline, or a future of weakness, distraction, regret? Another truth about habits is that they shape your identity, and your identity reinforces your habits in a powerful cycle. If you see yourself as someone who can't stay consistent, you will subconsciously sabotage your habits to match that belief. But if you start telling yourself, I am the kind of person who honors my commitments, your actions will rise to meet that identity. This is why positive self-talk is critical in habit formation, because every time you affirm a positive identity, you strengthen the mental foundation for consistent action. When you say, I am disciplined, I am healthy, I am focused, and then follow those words with aligned habits. You begin to embody them until they become natural. Your habits and your identity are mirrors, reflecting and reinforcing each other, and when you take control of one, you influence the other. Building habits is not just about willpower. It is about designing systems and environments that make the right choice the easy choice, and the wrong choice the hard one. If you want to exercise more, keep your workout clothes ready and visible. If you want to eat healthier, stock your kitchen with nourishing foods. If you want to focus more, put your phone in another room while you work. The less friction between you and your desired habit, the more likely you are to repeat it. Likewise, the more friction you add to a destructive habit, the less power it has over you. Delete the app, hide the junk food, distance yourself from environments that trigger bad behavior. Discipline becomes easier when the environment supports your habits instead of sabotaging them. Another key principle is starting small. Many people fail at habits because they aim for dramatic changes too quickly. Vowing to overhaul their diet overnight, work out 2 hours a day, or meditate for an hour daily, and when they inevitably fail to sustain it, they give up entirely. But habits grow best when they start small and expand naturally. Start with 5 minutes of meditation, 1 push-up, a single page of reading. Habit is rooted, expand it. Small wins build momentum, and momentum makes larger wins possible. The goal is not intensity but consistency, because consistency compounds. But what about when habits break? Because they will. You will miss days, fall into old patterns, and feel tempted to quit. The difference between those who succeed and those who fail is not perfection but recovery. A single missed day is nothing, but missing repeatedly creates a downward spiral. The rule is simple: never miss twice. If you break the chain, restart it immediately. Forgive yourself quickly but return firmly. This resilience is the true strength of habit formation, because life will always bring disruptions, but your ability to recommit separates the disciplined from the drifting. Not underestimate the power of keystone habits, those habits that create ripple effects across your entire life. Exercise, for example, doesn't just improve fitness, it boosts energy, confidence, and discipline in every area. Waking up early doesn't just give you time, it builds structure and intention for your day. Reading daily doesn't just give knowledge, it shapes focus and patience. Keystone habits unlock momentum that spills into all other areas of growth, so identify and prioritize them. Finally, remember this: your habits are not just actions, they are votes for the person you are becoming. Every workout is a vote for strength. Every moment of focus is a vote for discipline. Every page you read is a vote for wisdom. No single vote makes the decision, but over time the majority wins. Your future self is the result of the habits you cast today. Want a better future? You must start casting better votes now. Growth is not magic, it is math. Small actions repeated relentlessly add up to extraordinary change. So stop waiting for motivation, stop dreaming about giant leaps, and start mastering your habits. Because when your habits change, your identity changes, your results change, entire life changes. Self-discipline is the bridge between goals and achievement, the invisible force that turns intentions into results, and without it you will remain trapped in the endless cycle of wishing, planning, and dreaming without ever experiencing the reality of progress. Because motivation will come and go like the wind, but discipline stays steady, holding you to your commitments long after the excitement has faded. And if you want to force yourself to improve, you must learn to master discipline as both a mindset and a practice. Discipline is not about punishment or restriction. It is about alignment, the ability to keep your actions consistent with your values and long-term goals, even when your emotions, urges, or environment tempt you otherwise. It is the art of choosing what you want most over what you want now, of delaying gratification today so that you can enjoy greater rewards tomorrow. Every person who has ever achieved anything meaningful has relied not on fleeting motivation, but on steady discipline. When you look at their lives, you will see habits and routines that protect their focus, guard their time, and reinforce their priorities. Discipline is freedom disguised as effort, because while it may feel restrictive in the moment, it liberates you from chaos, distraction, and regret. The undisciplined person is constantly at the mercy of impulses, pulled in every direction by moods, temptations, and distractions, living reactively instead of intentionally. But the disciplined person is steady, grounded, and free, because their choices are guided by principle rather than impulse. To master discipline, first step is clarity. You cannot be disciplined about something vague. You must know exactly what you are working toward, why it matters, and what specific actions will take you there. Discipline thrives on clarity and crumbles under confusion. Write down your goals, define the behaviors that support them, and commit to those behaviors daily. The next step is structure, because discipline does not grow in randomness, it grows in routine. Create a daily schedule that reflects your priorities and protects your energy from being wasted. Block time for focused work, for exercise, for learning, and stick to it with the same seriousness you would honor a meeting with someone important, because it is important. It is a meeting with your future self. But even with clarity and structure, discipline requires practice, because your brain is conditioned to seek comfort and avoid effort. And if you wait until you feel like it, you will never act. Discipline is about acting regardless of feelings. You will not always feel like working out, studying, or practicing your craft, but discipline says, do it anyway. Every time you act in alignment with your goals instead of your mood, you strengthen your discipline muscle. Just as muscles grow stronger with resistance, discipline grows stronger every time you resist temptation and follow through. That resistance, repeated consistently, becomes resilience. Another truth about discipline is that it must be trained in small moments before it can handle big challenges. If you cannot keep the small promises you make to yourself, like waking up on time, finishing a task you started, or saying no to distractions, you will not be able to keep the big ones. Discipline is built brick by brick, choice by choice, ordinary moments of life. Every time you hit snooze instead of rising, time you break your plan. Just this once. Every time you let yourself off the hook, you weaken the structure of your discipline, and every time you push through, you strengthen it. This is why integrity with yourself is critical. If you constantly break promises to yourself, will not trust your own word, and without that trust, discipline collapses. But when you consistently follow through, even on small things, you build a sense of inner authority that carries you through larger challenges. Discipline also requires boundaries, because you cannot be disciplined in a world where everything is allowed and accessible at any moment. Set boundaries for your time, your energy, your environment. Say no more often. Remove temptations from your space. Structure your digital world so that distractions are harder to reach. Willpower is not infinite, but smart boundaries conserve it, making discipline easier to maintain. And remember, discipline is not rigidity, it is flexibility with purpose. A disciplined person is not someone who never rests or never adjusts. It is someone who knows when to push, when to pause, how to stay aligned with their goals even when circumstances change. Rest, recovery, and enjoyment are part of disciplined living because they are intentional and balanced, not reckless indulgence. Discipline without balance becomes burnout, but discipline with balance becomes sustainable growth. Another important element is accountability. While discipline begins with you, can be reinforced by others. Share your goals with someone you trust. Join a community of people striving for similar things, or hire a coach or mentor. Accountability multiplies discipline by adding external pressure to internal commitment. When you know someone else will see whether you follow through, are far less likely to quit. But the deepest form of accountability is to your own future self. The version of you 5 or 10 years from now who will live with the consequences of today's choices. Every act of discipline is a gift to that future self, and every act of weakness is a burden you pass forward. Ask yourself daily, am I building a future I will thank myself for or one I will regret? And here is the paradox: discipline, once painful, becomes joy. At first it feels heavy, like a chain around your freedom, but as you practice it, it becomes light, because it removes chaos and builds strength. The more disciplined you become, less energy you waste on indecision, excuses, and recovery from mistakes, and the more energy you have for creation, growth, and excellence. Eventually, discipline feels natural, almost effortless, because it becomes who you are. That is the ultimate transformation. Not to force discipline, but to become disciplined, to weave it so deeply into your identity that it no longer feels like something you do, it feels like something you are. When that happens, improvement is no longer a struggle, it is inevitable. So understand this: success is not about talent, luck, inspiration nearly as much as it is about discipline. Discipline is the great equalizer, giving ordinary people extraordinary results because they simply refuse to quit, refuse to drift, refuse to live at the mercy of impulse. If you master discipline, you master yourself, and if you master yourself, you can master any goal, any dream, any challenge that life places in front of you. Discipline is the ultimate self-respect, the daily proof that you value your future more than your momentary comfort. When you live that way, consistently, relentlessly, you cannot help but improve, because improvement is the natural reward of a disciplined life. The journey of self-improvement is never truly finished, because growth